All right. So does that mean you want to do roll call?
So member Lane Abraben.
Present.
Jason Atkins Tufts. Collie Blount. Carrie Bush.
Present.
Linda Dixon.
Here.
Evelyn Fox. Oh, she's just. Member Fox is coming in right now. I'll mark her present. Armando Grandi Gomez is present. Armando, are you there? Jacob Eide. Christopher Merritt.
I'm here. I'm sorry if I missed you here.
Yep, I got you. Okay. Jason Mitchell. Warren Nielsen.
Here.
Michael Palmer.
Present.
Bradley Pollitt.
Present.
Evelyn Fox is here.
Yes, I got you, Member Fox. Thank you.
Yes, let me get my picture up there. Okay.
Stephanie C.
Evelyn
Wright
Fox here.
Here, present.
and Jessica Turner Evans.
Present.
Okay. We have 11 members present.
We're good to go. Under communications, we've got a chair's report, which I don't have any except to continue to tell everybody to stay safe. Hope you all have wonderful holidays and have a chance to spend some time with friends at a distance, but just be careful and be safe. This is some dangerous times. Director's report. You're-
Good evening, everybody. Some good news. So we were made aware that Destination South Main is a grand winner and will be up for the Grand Conceptor Project Award, chosen from the 5 grand winners by, and let me make sure I get this right, it's the ACEC, so it stands for the American Council of Engineering Companies. So this is a Engineering Excellence Award, and it's a big deal. We've heard from our engineer buddies. And just great for the South Main project. So we will follow this and find out if we get the grand prize and report back, but it's an honor to win the award that we have won. So I just wanted to pass that along and thank everyone for their support of the South Main project. And I think we were able to accomplish a lot of really great things together, and it's always fun when you complete a project and then later on it gets recognized. So I wanted to share that with you all as some happy news to end the year.
That's exciting. Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Really quick. Thanks everyone for your flexibility. I wasn't clear in the email, but we were bumped from the auditorium for this meeting because of the joint city county meeting. And with the requirement for all of the boards to use the same room, there are likely to be more conflicts in the future. So, and we tend to find out about them with not a lot of notice. So just thanks for your flexibility. And as conflicts arise, I'll let you know as soon as I find out, but that's all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it does make it a little difficult to actually get our business done. I want to reconfirm, this is a meeting. We won't be taking votes. It's just for information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So under business discussion items, it looks like there's something, board ethics and follow-up conversation. Is that an actual item? There's no text under it.
Attorney's office was planning on being here just to answer some questions because some questions have come up, but I haven't seen Sean McDermott in the audience. So
Okay,
we'll have to skip it for now.
we can, if they show up, we'll bring them in later. So that would move us. Yes, Mr. Grundy.
I actually had my hand up for the last. I was going to give some insight on something we could do for the meeting site. I wanted to speak to that when she was talking about meeting in the auditorium. Would it be okay, Mr. Chair, if staff could maybe come up with an alternative meeting place so in the future, if we get bumped again, we have an alternative place to be able to meet?
That would be fine with me. Thought the commission had indicated we had to be in those chambers, but maybe not. Because you had looked for a place that could be screened and appropriately distanced, was my understanding.
The room would have to meet certain requirements, and then we would need approval from the clerk's office and the charter officer, the city manager. So
Does meeting virtually no longer meet with those requirements?
no, it doesn't.
Even in the height of this pandemic, we can't get that changed?
I think that was a
No.
governor's order.
It's the governor's order.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, okay.
And then the second
Yeah.
part of that was for the ethics thing. If Mr. McDermott's not here, are we just going to move past that? Or are we going to actually have a conversation about it?
I thought I heard we were going to move past it. If he shows up, then we will talk, have him in that conversation. And if not, we'll have to push it to the next meeting, I think.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So the next item is introduction of downtown strategic plan, project team B.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the GCRA. My name is Eric Bredfeld. I do economic development work with the city. It's nice to see everybody tonight. Tonight, what we wanted to do is we wanted to have the consultant that the city recently brought under contract as late as last month make a brief presentation to the GCRA. They are just here today and tomorrow for an initial visit, and we've toured them around the downtown to several places today. We wanted them to introduce themselves and their approach to the project. And then importantly, you are the first public meeting that we're having them speak to, and we'd like to see if there are any insights, contributions, recommendations the board would have at this stage in terms of the future work that's going to be done on this effort, observations, etc. We did have a brief meeting as well this afternoon, just internally with the staff for introduction purposes. But this downtown strategic plan is really a top strategic priority of the City Commission. And so with that, I'll introduce Darren Meyer from MKSK, and he'll have a short presentation for you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darren Meyer with MKSK. I am a city planner and landscape architect based out of Greenville, South Carolina. And we have partnered with EDA locally and a firm called Development Strategies to embark on the downtown plan effort. MKSK, we are an urban design and planning firm. Again, I mentioned our work is largely going to be based out of our office in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm joined this evening by my colleagues Andrew and Luis, who are with us. We also have Matt Wetley from Development Strategies, and Clay with EDA has joined us as well. So this is a great partnership that we're looking forward to working with the Gainesville community on advancing the vision for downtown. Again, MKSK will be the lead on this effort. Development Strategies will be providing the real estate market analysis. And EDA, who provides really great local knowledge and local expertise, will be providing feasibility in terms of some planning and civil engineering on this effort as well. We've got a great group of folks, in addition to the ones that I mentioned, that are part of this team. And we're looking forward to sort of bringing their experience to bear on this effort as well. So a little bit about our approach. One of the foundational pieces of the way that we go about community-based planning is starting with understanding what the strengths and assets are in the Gainesville community, in the downtown and the near downtown neighborhoods. What are those strengths that are beloved by the community that we can build on? So all of the ideas, all the recommendations that we develop throughout this process, we want to make sure respond to and protect and enhance and build on those assets that we identified as part of this first effort, or first part of this effort. The second element of our approach is this notion of building for people. So really, as we think about what downtown can be, it really needs to be something that lifts the entire Gainesville community. So how do we maximize economic opportunity? How do we make sure that growth is inclusive? How do we create a downtown that is accessible and welcoming for the entire Gainesville community? This is really one of the chief components of our approach to this. And then the third is building for long-term value. So how do we both look for opportunities in the near term to make positive change and positive impact? But very importantly, how do we think about creating a sustainable foundation for how downtown grows and develops in the future in a way that aligns with community vision over the long term? The base for everything that we do as part of this process really begins and ends with community. So one of the first tasks that we will do is, as part of this effort, is work with city staff, work with city commission, and start to put together an approach for how we can meaningfully engage with community as part of this process. And we know that particularly here in the short term, hopefully for not too much longer, there's likely to be a mix of ways that we need to engage because of the health crisis and the pandemic. And we have some experience over the past 9 months of ways that we've attempted to do that and still reach out to the community effectively. We will, as part of this initial part of the process, we will memorialize this this plan for how we engage with community and with what we call a community engagement brief. So, you know, what our schedule is, how we're going to go about the engagement with different neighborhoods as part of this process, the stakeholders through this process. This will all be outlined in a community engagement brief that we put together in collaboration with the stakeholders in the city as the upfront element of this. And that'll form the basis for our public communications engagement throughout the process. There's also been a significant amount of planning that has been done in the community and a lot of concurrent planning going on. The comprehensive plan is active as well. So there are a number of aspects of that that are important as part of our effort. One is we want to understand the work that has been done to date, understand what's relevant, what's good, what needs to be pulled forward and built on from previous planning efforts and previous discussions with the community. We need to make sure that we understand not just sort of reading through these plans, but having conversations with folks that contributed to these and the champions for these efforts, and make sure that we really pull out the good work that has been done previously so that we can build on that. The other thing that's going to be important, again, thinking about community engagement, is how we are sensitive to our outreach in the community in a way that doesn't overtax or overburden the stakeholders in the community. So when we think about, for example, multiple parallel planning efforts with the city's comprehensive plan and this effort, how can we align our efforts and make sure that we are respecting people's time and their resources and energy as we go through this process? So we're going to be working very carefully with the work that's been done to date and the work that's ongoing to make sure our process aligns well with those and respects the ability of the community to really participate in a meaningful way in this. We have a process that will probably be just about under a year in length. You can see the 3 major phases of that effort here. So we'll have about 4 months where we'll do some of our initial community engagement that lays the foundation for this effort. We'll also do significant amount of analysis in that first phase as well. The second 4 months are going to be starting to take that foundational information and put together some initial ideas, bring those back to the community and see if we're on the right track, see if we have kind of matched the vision and the trajectory of what the vision is for the future of downtown. And then the third phase, which takes us into the last 3 months of this effort, we'll be looking at the tools and the mechanics for putting that vision into place. Our immediate next steps, as Mr. Bredfeld mentioned, I am in Gainesville today and tomorrow. for some initial introductions and getting familiar with the community. So it's great to be here. It's a beautiful afternoon to see downtown and the neighborhoods around downtown. So we have quite a full agenda over the next 2 days. We'll be doing some of our data analysis and information gathering over these first couple of months, and again, putting together our plan for how we want to approach engagement with the community. And then really in the new year, starting in January, this effort will launch in earnest, where we'll want to make sure that we have reached out to City Commission. We're glad to be here this evening to introduce ourselves to this group and get your preliminary thoughts on this effort. We'll have an advisory group that helps guide us through this process, and we'll start some of our initial community engagement in the first couple of months of 2021. So that's a brief snapshot of this project and just some fundamental pieces of our approach to this. And I'd be happy to get your initial thoughts on this effort, any questions or concerns or critical issues that you'd like to see addressed as we start to get underway.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking for hands if anybody, I think we remember how to hit our electronic hands. Put your hands up and I don't see any yet. I know somebody's got questions or comments. All right, Mr. Palmer.
All right, I guess I'll start it off. I guess I'm curious, when we're talking about this, I saw it says Northwest. Do we have an idea of what our boundaries would be for this area? When I see it says Northwest Main Street, I kind of like jump to a couple different spots that could use some help, but not sure if that's just what we're looking at.
That's a great question, and I think what you're referring to may have been a little misleading. We have not developed the community engagement plan yet for this project, so we showed an example from another community which had the Northwest label on it. So
okay,
I think that sort of addresses the Northwest question, but the bigger question of what the boundaries are is not prescriptive up front. I think that's something that we want to uncover as we get into some conversations about this, how downtown touches and engages and interacts with the surrounding neighborhoods is a very important part of this.
Okay, cool. I mean, I think personally, I'm very curious to see how this develops. One of my, I guess, personal passions for downtown Gainesville is trying to develop a culture of diverse and interesting small businesses. I think, you know, my personal feeling is that developing this diverse culture of small businesses and the different types of things that we have available sometimes gets or often gets lost behind the idea of let's just help out some of the bigger developments and things. So I'm really hoping, you know, we can maybe find a way to make some of these small businesses, find a way to maybe prevent what seems like gentrification of commercial properties in Gainesville, so that some of these small businesses from East Gainesville could actually make a home downtown. If you're in a small restaurant or you're doing a little pop-up kitchen, if you're looking to find your next phase, you're not looking at downtown because the real estate market can be a little bit cost prohibitive there. But that's just my personal passion. So I'm interested to see how that component works out of this.
That's great thought. Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Any other hands? While we're waiting for people, I'll add.
I got one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
So I guess this might be a question for Eric Bredfeld more so than the developer.
Yes,
Eric,
sir.
are you there?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, so I got a question for you. How you came up with this developer? I guess it was you had an internal team that came up with this, and you came up with it, coming up with this MKSK, this developer, correct?
We had Mr. Chair, members of the board, we had an RFP process, a request for proposal, a competitive process. We had and then normally when we have a competitive process, we have an evaluation of the submissions. And we had, I believe, upwards of 10 to 12 submissions. We had many submissions, and our evaluation committee, I mentioned in the agenda item, was representatives from the Department of Sustainable Development, the GCRA, the mobility area, and then the area that I'm in as well.
Eric, I was just getting clarity. It's my understanding it was more than transparent. I'm satisfied with that part. So for you, for Caper, Eric, Sarit, and what is your name, sir, from MKSK?
Darren Meyer.
Darren. Eric, how are we going to dive into the past problems? And is Darren familiar with the past problems that come with the community in order to, when we're going forward, how are you going to, give me a second, I'm getting tongue twisted here. How are we diving into past issues to be sure we don't resist the issues from the past?
Well, Mr. Chair and members of the board, as you know, I've been around in the city organization for a number of years. I've worked with many of you in different capacities and worked with you as citizens, et cetera. I think we're going to have a very clear vetting of some of the issues that have come up before. And we already have done that. So we will do that. I think when you're around a place for a period of time, you get a little bit more free in terms of sharing what some of your views are, how things have rolled out over time. So I will have that. We will be having some frank conversations with the consultant. I think the other important thing for the board to recognize is that this is going to be an iterative process, and I think what we will make sure that we do, and Mr. Meyer referred to putting together the engagement strategy, for instance, and I think it would probably be a very good idea that when we hit certain milestones, we make sure that we come back to the board to make sure that the board is comfortable with, what those milestones are and how we're going to be pursuing various aspects of the project. And if we've missed something, then we would basically be, seeking that guidance.
Eric, since you spoke to it from a more holistic approach, I want to kind of peel back the onion a little bit more. So when I'm talking about resisting the past projects, what the city tends to get mired into a lot of times is we cherry pick areas that we're concerned about. For example, Mr. Meyer, did I say your name correctly, sir? Mr. Meyer, when we're talking about the urban core, which is, I think you're talking about the urban core, our downtown, we tend to focus on certain areas. And I think Member Palmer was somewhat alluding to it. And when you brought up the Northwest area, for example, Mr. Meyer, we have an area called the Power District. What I don't want to talk about more so a holistic approach, as I want to do is talk about really the urban core and narrowly defining what the urban core is and how we focus on it. Now, what you don't know, Mr. Meyer, what I do know is we as a board, we're tasked with that. We have an interlocal agreement with the county to address this very thing. And so Mr. Bredfeld is over Caper, who one of his functions would be, according to his office, is land acquisition. So for us, it's kind of, there's a lot of moving pieces here where Caper doesn't necessarily come to us. They're coming there because, they got guidance to do so, but it's kind of like we're mired. And I want to make sure that what we're tasked to do doesn't get lost in a framework of we're nitpicking. But make no mistake about it, when we are charged as a group and we are the financing arm to address funding, the public financing arm of this organization to provide advice to the city commission, we need to narrowly define how those dollars are going to and what they're going to. So why is this important? There was a motion back in February when we were still meeting in person, Mr. Meyer, where I actually made a motion to narrowly define what would define the urban core. You don't know anything about that. You weren't here. Not a problem. So Mr. Bredfeld, what I'm concerned about when I'm talking about the lessons of the past is we tend to get bogged down into areas of opportunity and we leave others hanging out to dry. So the Power District hasn't really had a problem, and we can look at where the rubber meets the road when it comes to projects. Innovation Square, which is Midtown, not necessarily the urban core, hasn't had that problem. But our real urban core, Mr. Meyer, has had that problem. And so I tend to agree with Member Palmer very much so when it comes to making sure we are narrowly tailoring and not just talking holistically and in platitudes. Because we start talking in platitudes, it's going to be problematic very quickly. So if you can be specific, and I know you really can't right now, we're just here to listen. But my recommendation to you is, let's not talk holistically. Let's not talk in platitudes. Let's be direct, concise, and clear. So that urban core is really important. And I think a lot of members on this body, I don't speak for them, I speak for myself, but based in past conversations with my colleagues on this body, the urban core is a lot of us want to have a very strong, robust urban core to include a synergy with the eastern part of our city. So if we could narrowly tailor that down, and if you can bring some light to that, either you, Mr. Bredfeld, Ms. Sala, or you, Mr. Meyer, I'd appreciate that. And I digress. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm looking for any other hands I don't see any up. All right. That was a good discussion. I know that you all will be coming back to this group. I guess I would look at our group and reiterate what Member Grundy Gomez said. This will be our job to watch this, to make sure that the important elements get captured. And I do want to make sure that the design team realizes that the downtown is also this nexus. It's what links east and west. It's what brings business from Waldo Road over to the university. And it's in the middle. So there's a lot of things going on. And we have projects elsewhere in our larger district that we want to make sure are connected to. So, but Mr. Grundy Gomez has something else to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bredfeld, something else that just came to mind. I'm working with staff. I guess for you and Mr. Meyer, Eric, at the last meeting, and I don't want things to get lost in translation, for you and your role, I've known, Mr. Chair, I've known Eric Bredfeld for quite some time. Know his capabilities. Mr. Bredfeld, when we go to have this community engagement, and I can't see him. Is he still there? I can't see him on screen.
Yeah, he's still there.
Mr. Bredfeld, can you hear me?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay. When we go to have this community engagement discussion, this is what's going to be rare. Is there a way before you go back to have that community discussion as you have the internal workings? Because I know one part of this, there's some synergies, Mr. Bredfeld and Mr. Meyer. Like some of these projects, for example, we have some property in our downtown, actually near the power district, which would be a GRU property. We have a private developer that was interested in getting that developed, but that also has some skin in the game when it comes to 8th and Waldo Road. So, Mr. Bredfeld, what I would like to do, and if that means I can have that discussion with you online or set up a meeting, or we do that in the sunshine, I'm happy to do that anyway. But I'd like to flesh out some of that discussion, because there is some overlap with what you're going to be doing here and what's going to be happening in the eastern part of our city. And I do see that synergy. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, that makes a lot of sense. And as I said, we feel that the mechanics of this is that the consultant is going to draw up an engagement plan to really go through and flesh out how they are going to engage with the community. And before we actually execute on that, we will likely come back to the board to talk about it. And then also, yes, anytime any of the board members want to discuss any aspect of this project, I live in the Thomas Center. I'm happy to discuss it anytime. My doors are always open.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Thank you. Great discussion. This is going to be an exciting project, and look forward to it. I don't see any other hands up. So the next item on our agenda is Colliers International Introduction Action Plan and Market Overview.
Also, Sean McDermott has just arrived.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I wasn't sure if there was anybody was going to introduce us, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Ken Krasnow. I'm the vice chairman of Colliers International. We are excited to be here and to virtually meet with you. Under other circumstances, we would have taken the opportunity to meet in person. We are going to give you, again, similar to what MKSK just went through, a brief overview of who we are, a little bit about our team, sort of a description of our action plan to date. And we have some information that might be informative with regards to the market. And again, I think you have a copy of this this deck in front of you. So, we can dive into that as much as you would like to, but it's a really kind of just a brief overview of kind of where we are in the market. So Colliers was retained by the city a couple of months ago to effectively be a real estate advisor and call it, for lack of a better word, executioner. We're here to get things done. Colliers, as you see on the screen, is a global real estate services firm. First and foremost, we are a brokerage firm. So we are very used to operating in the realm of being held accountable and being rewarded for getting stuff done. But I think the global perspective here is important because ultimately, what we want to do, and we know how important the downtown is, not only to you but to the overall city in general. We believe in a strong urban core. We believe in the diversity, and as you go around the world, you're gonna you see a lot of examples of where a truly diverse, engaged urban core are thriving and are very successful. And our goal is ultimately to bring the story of why companies that have done similar kind of projects across the world would be interested in coming to Gainesville. So part and parcel of our global platform is to tell the story about what makes Gainesville such a special city to the rest of the world that may not or know it in only one sense of the sense. Anyway, next. Sorry, Suzanne. We are, in addition to being obviously very strong globally, we have a very strong footprint here in Florida. We do have an office in Gainesville. We have 12 offices throughout the state of Florida. As you can see there, we do a lot of business throughout the state of Florida. So again, it's important to understand the global platform, but it's equally important to understand what's going on in and around the state of Florida. And again, the state of Florida, state of Texas, as you're probably reading the newspapers, are getting a lot of attention for companies and businesses kind of all over the country. So what we're seeing that's happening in South Florida, Southwest Florida, Jacksonville, et cetera, all has implications for what we want to accomplish here in Gainesville. Next. This really just kind of, gives a little perspective of what we're going to bring to the table. We've done this before for many cities and counties throughout the state, and we know the market. We know the market well. We have boots on the ground in Gainesville. As I said before, we understand where Florida is going. So we have a very systematic and a very programmatic approach, but at the end of the day, we know how to execute and we know how to bring the story and bring the market to Gainesville and and bring that marriage together. So we're used to operating in the sunshine. We're used to operating with many GCRA or GCRA boards like yourselves, and that kind of collaboration is important. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what sets us apart is we are first and foremost, we are brokers. We are used to getting getting stuff done. Next. As I mentioned before, we have a very broad and diverse team. A couple of them are on the call with me tonight. But as you can see there in the middle, we do have two senior members of our team who are based here in Gainesville, Rory and Dan. Brooke Berkowitz works with me across our public institutions platform. And again, a lot of resources in the way of research, data, analytics, and marketing. Again, all of those elements are critically important in, as I said before, bringing the story of Gainesville to the rest of the world. Next. One thing that kind of aligns with what Darren talked about is we are all about community and board engagement. We want to get stuff done, but we want to get stuff done that aligns with your goals and objectives of the city and with the CRA. So again, the timing is a little bit different, but as Darren just walked through, we've been doing this for the last couple of years, and even through COVID, we do have the ability to meet with you, to understand where your priorities are, and to engage the community as we go through the process of getting some of these projects moving forward. Next. As I mentioned before, as you can see there, this is just a sampling of some of the cities and the counties that we're doing work for. But ultimately, the underlying thread in all of this is a lot of these cities and counties have had projects that have just kind of wallowed in their books for years and never really gotten it done. Cities and counties would send out RFPs, 82-page of a lot of, public procurement stuff that a lot of the developers and so on and so forth don't have the patience or the wherewithal to read. And so we are effectively the facilitator between the kind of the public sector and the private sector. And we have a lot of success of getting projects that have, again, been sort of in the planning stages for many, many, many years to the execution phase. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Next. We have been engaged, as I said here before, for a couple of months. So we do have a good broad understanding of some of the important areas of the city. I don't know who mentioned it before, but the connectivity, east, west, so on and so forth, we see as a critical component of getting a number of these projects, like I said, off the drawing board and into the project phase. It's great having, Eric and Kara as part of the Caper team, with their experience. And Sarah on the CRA side has been great in terms of funneling somebody mentioned a lot of the history as we saw before. There have been a lot of plans. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of activity that has taken place. Our focus now is to hone in on a few of those areas in particular and make some things happen. So we'll talk a little bit more on the next couple of slides about a couple of these, call it priority projects. I think next, Suzanne, right? So somebody mentioned the power district. And so, we obviously understand all of the dynamics that have gone into this, transformative project. It's extremely exciting. We have a meeting, I think it's tomorrow, with, the various stakeholders there, as you see on the next steps, CAPER and CRA and GRU, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, our goal is to really do a deep dive into the market, understand what the market, will and can bear in this area, and look to be engaged in the market in the first quarter of next year. Next. Another extremely important, and we think transformative and yet synergistic project, obviously, is with 8th and Waldo. And so our goal here is to really drive, a public-private partnership economic development strategy. Again, sort of all of this is rooted in the fact of, we need to understand where the, kind of the market dynamics are, and then obviously marrying the community uses and so on and so forth. But we see this as a real potential as an economic driver, again, so as somebody mentioned, to really kind of tie in the various areas of the city, east, west, with downtown being obviously in the center. And as you see there, we have a meeting on, I guess it's Thursday, with various stakeholders to really start engaging on this, very, very important project. Next. Lot 10, which I think you're familiar with, or people, or I don't know how it's referred to, but for all intents and purposes, this gives you a sense of a more sort of immediate timetable. Our goal here is to bring the project to commission on the January 7th meeting. And then, as you can see there, we're going to engage the market in January, and then we look to close by by the end of the year. And again, this goes back to the fact of this is what we do. I mean, if we were working for John Smith developers, we understand how to market property. We understand how to execute. And equally important, we understand how to operate under a public, sector, sort of clientele. So at the end of the day, it's marrying the, public procurement and yet the private sector engagement to drive activity and drive interest in a property. And ultimately, this is a kind of a tried and true process that we would execute on multiple projects, for the city over time. But this just gives you an example of something that's a little bit more immediate and effectively, ready to launch. Next. Again, I don't want to, I know you have probably a pretty full agenda, so I don't want to go through too much of this information. But this is just sort of an overview of the market that we thought might be of interest. Again, a lot of the projects that we're talking about throughout, your CRA district cover various aspects: hospitality, retail, office, to a certain degree, industrial. All of those dynamics of the market are important to understand, because ultimately the developers that are going to potentially invest in the CRA or in Gainesville in general need to understand, where these market drivers are and where they're going. So, I'm sorry, this just gives you a quick overview. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but we did want to give you some perspective. Next. One thing that is obviously, interesting is, all of the various, sort of disruptors that we've been dealing with, in this COVID environment. And I don't have to, again, belabor the point, but all of these have, economic and social, impacts in terms of, where the markets are gonna ultimately recover and what that recovery will look like, because each of these situations are going to have lasting effects on what the recovery ultimately looks like, and we need to be responsive to each of these factors. Next, one area that this is just a few areas I think that the COVID sort of experience is really trends that have been in the works for the last couple of years, and you've heard this term before, but have been tremendously accelerated by COVID. So was online shopping as example, were people doing it, pre-COVID? Yes. Has it accelerated? Has it completely changed the way people are buying and spending patterns and so on and so forth? Yes. What does that mean for industrial space, distribution space, cold storage space for food and so on and so forth? So that is a complete, acceleration of a trend that had already been taking place. Same thing with working remotely, right? We're all doing these Zoom meetings and so on and so forth. And while there's certain aspects of it that we don't like and are not as productive, I think people have understood that working remotely is something that's here to stay. And companies are adapting how they utilize office space. And somebody mentioned before about, incubators and kind of driving new businesses. And this is going to be a really important part of how you structure office in the future because of the way that working from home and working from anywhere. And then same thing in retail. Retail had been hurting for years. And what COVID has done has really just accelerated, the spate of, bankruptcies and store closings and so on and so forth. But it's also accelerated a new trend of new uses and how companies and how retailers and e-commerce companies are meeting the needs of the consumer in this. I say post-COVID. I mean, I know there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I know we're not post-COVID yet, but I think people are preparing for what that's going to look like. Next. I don't know if Rory is on, but again, what we wanted to do was just give you a quick little snapshot of each of the major, food groups. So multifamily, office, retail, hospitality. Again, I wanted to be respectful of your time, and I know that you guys have a full agenda, but these next number of slides really just talk to the market dynamics of where the multifamily, and you see what we're looking at is where does Gainesville stack up against the state of Florida. And again, all of these are statistics and information that any housing developer, any retail developer, any industrial developer, any hospitality developer, they're all paying attention to the current state of the market and then the future state of the market. Again, just more data on where the multifamily market in Gainesville has been moving over the years. Next. This is student housing in particular. Obviously, we know it's a critical component of the overall Gainesville market. Some of which may be applicable within the CRA, some not. But again, generally speaking, it's a market that we need to pay very close attention to as we go forward. The office market, as I mentioned before, is obviously going to go through a complete change over the coming years. How companies utilize, where companies choose to locate is changing kind of right before our eyes. You're seeing stories of, Oracle moving from the Bay Area to Texas, and Goldman Sachs moving, part of their group from New York to Florida. So we do believe that, the office market is in a complete kind of transitionary period. And it's something that, we need to be very mindful of as we start to look at, incubating space and growing companies and attracting companies to a market like Gainesville. As these are just some of the big picture trends that I think we already talked about: working from home, working anywhere. Retail market, again, just to give you a little perspective of where the retail market is as we stand, here today, and where we think the market is going in the future is really, I think, a more critical, part of the conversation. Next slide talks a little bit about that. As I mentioned before, you've heard this term omni-channel. I mean, that's, pick up, buy online, pick up in store, curbside delivery, micro fulfillment centers, stores that, don't stock inventory anymore, but are more just like showrooms. You're starting to see more of these dark stores where they're literally just, where you go and you just place, you place orders, but you don't actually buy or pick up anything there. So all of this, all of these changes are going to affect how retail is on, in the 8th and Waldo district, or in the Power District, or in downtown. All of these trends are really going to be critically important as we move into the phase of executing on some of these projects in the CRA. Next. And industrial is probably one of the strongest markets across the state of Florida, and again, primarily driven from the e-commerce trends. Everybody is used to ordering on Amazon, same day delivery, 2-hour delivery, etc. That's not going away. And all of these companies, it's not just Amazon, it's Target, it's Whole Foods, it's Publix, it's you name it. They all need to figure out a more effective and efficient distribution center. So the perspective of industrial as manufacturing is changing kind of right before our eyes. And you're going to start to see some of these quasi industrial type uses, distribution, etc., popping up in the urban core. We're seeing it in Miami. We're seeing it in markets all over the state of Florida. And it is something that is a trend that I think is going to be here to stay. Next. A lot of things that we just talked about: last mile logistics, and the hospitality market. Obviously, tourism is a critically important component. Obviously, the market, if you look at some of those statistics in the bottom left there, they've started to recover a little bit. There's been a little bit more movement, but the reality is the hospitality market is in for a couple of years, and emphasis on plural, of challenging times. Some of the leisure travel will start to recover, next year. But real, business travel, convention travel, big meetings, large scale, gatherings, are still, a ways off. And so that's going to, take its toll on the hospitality market. That being said, a lot of the big, well-capitalized hospitality groups look at bigger macro picture trends. Employment growth, job growth, population growth, all of those larger big picture trends ultimately will mean that the hospitality market in those markets that have those kind of positive trends will recover, and will recover very strongly. So we're bullish on the hospitality market. in Gainesville long term. It's just a question of the next, couple of years getting through what we obviously understand will be some challenging times. Next. That's just a little bit more what I just talked about. Okay, so some of the things that we think where is going to be sort of alignment with what your group is behind. As I mentioned before, the changes that we've seen kind of coming out of this COVID environment, more inclusive communities, more diverse communities, more sustainable communities, more places where people can, live, work, and feel and support a local environment, all speak to a lot of the opportunities that we think present itself in whether it's in, again, in 8th and Waldo or innovation or downtown or power district, all of these trends that a lot of both people and investors are moving towards in the future, we think, align very nicely with where, Gainesville is positioned and specifically where some of these projects, are positioned. So this is the first of many opportunities that we have and we expect to be in front of you as we move forward on a number of these projects. You're a critical component to, for us to, move things along and get things done. We need your engagement and your input and your leadership. And so far we're very encouraged again with, with Sarah and the team and so on and so forth. A lot of great work has gone on so far. And our goal here is to again, bring a lot of that great work to bear, bring it out into the market, validate it with reasonable, market data that every owner, investor, developer, tenant, et cetera, is going to be looking at, and move some of these projects along. And so thank you for your time. Sorry this took maybe a little longer than we expected, but we're happy to answer any questions. But like I said, this will be the first of many opportunities we have to hopefully, meet with you, but maybe meet under more normalized circumstances as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krasnow. I have a quick clarifying question.
Yes.
The written material we were given indicated that Collier was hired to do assessment of real estate and disposition of real estate, market study. You speak as if the city's hired you to help bring projects to fruition. That some of the projects that the city wants to get accomplished, Collier is going to be working as a project manager to do that. Did I misunderstand that, or I'm just trying to get clarification?
It's both. We are doing a strategic assessment of all of the real estate as we speak. We are working with the city on managing, leases and making sure that, rent is supposed to be collected when it's supposed to be collected and charged when it's supposed to be charged. I focused our conversation here today just on some of the specific projects and areas that I think are, more germane to the CRA. But yes, ultimately, it is to put forth a strategic plan and a strategic assessment, and then to ultimately execute on it.
Okay, thank you. Got two hands up. I'll go with Mr. Palmer first, and then we'll go to Mr. Grundy Gomez.
Okay, thank you. I guess I wanted to touch on I guess this, maybe this might be a little bit of a long question or long discussion, but one of the things I feel like I've seen in the Gainesville real estate market and being downtown and looking downtown is I mean, I'm very excited to see Colliers involved. I know you guys do a very good job marketing properties, and I'm really excited to see an international reach for the type of projects that we're doing here. The one thing that I am a little bit concerned about, having looked through your presentation and having, kind of dug through that, is I'm concerned that we are going to spend too much time focusing on highest and best use of these properties. One of the problems in Gainesville is that every single time you look at highest and best use always means student housing or hotels in Gainesville. Right now, there's something like 5 or 6 student housing projects that are on board. There's at least one hotel planned, maybe 2 more hotels planned. And my biggest concern for Gainesville is that there's not that interesting thing for people to stay and live in Gainesville. Student housing and hotels only do things for the developers who bring them. I think the idea that those student housing jobs and hotel type jobs are good jobs for people of East Gainesville is honestly, quite frankly, offensive. I don't think those jobs help anybody move up. What I would really hope to see is some way that we can market to developers who may not necessarily be looking for highest and best use. I'd like to see personally more pseudo warehouse, like a nicer quality warehouse somewhere downtown. I think there's a lot of smaller businesses that would be looking to spawn out of incubators, but cannot find places downtown because every other person who owns property in this area is holding out on a certain price on the hopes that a hotel or student housing development is going to buy them. And the economics work when we have student housing and hotel developers coming in and buying those properties. But for the citizens of Gainesville, those 2 things really don't help us grow, don't really help us, kind of develop that interesting culture downtown. No branch of Google who wants to, Google's not going to develop a branch downtown because there's a bunch of hotels. They're going to develop a branch. They're going to bring a branch downtown because they see great spots for people to live. They're going to be seeing, great spots for their workers to visit and spend time. And right now, because of the transient nature of students and people coming in and out, it can seem like businesses can hit those targets when students are in town, but when students are out of town, it becomes very difficult for them. So I'm also kind of concerned about the gentrification of our kind of gentrification of commercial spaces in town. I would like to see, when we're talking about comparing Gainesville, I think, the numbers looks like Gainesville's on par when we compare Gainesville to large swaths of Florida. Comparing Gainesville to Florida, some of those numbers looked pretty reasonable, but I'd be really interested to see how Gainesville compares to other either towns that we'd like to be more like. Everybody brings up Asheville. Everybody brings up Asheville, the Boulders, the Austins. I think a more reasonable comparison based on some of the demographic research that I've had to do is a place like Boise, Idaho, actually. And so I'd like to see something like that as maybe a comparison in there because they have, major public university and similar size. So I guess that's, just kind of my feedback on this. I don't want to beat you guys up or anything like that, but I do think
that's the kind of input and feedback that we're looking for. And again, the good news, generally speaking, as I said before, when we work for a lot of other municipalities, when you're in control of the land, right, then highest and and best price per se, right? Doesn't obviously necessarily always, or even some cases, even it's not even relevant, right? If you want to see an affordable housing development, or if you want to see a, incubator space, it may not be the highest and best use, but the fact that you control, the property and you're able to structure something that will ultimately make sense for a developer of that kind of use, you're in control and you're able to do that. So that's where we need the feedback. We're not going to be driven by where the highest and best use is, but we're going to be driven by what does the community want to see in, the innovation district, or at 8th and Waldo, or in the power. What does the mix, and then we will build the model, around that.
Great. Thank you.
Member Seawright.
Yeah, Miss.
Okay. I think I had just unmute myself. I just have very quick comments. First of all, I agree with Mr. Palmer. And I also was glad that that Chairman Pollard asked the question he asked, because when I went through the presentation and the information prior to this meeting, I also was thinking that once I heard your presentation and I was listening to something different than what I read. So I'm glad that was cleared up. One of the things that I did see, and you may not have gotten to that point yet, is I was excited to hear Colliers was coming on board to do some work for the city, because I do know that you all are a great real estate and development and property management company. And when I saw the presentation, I saw that there was a section of affordable housing. Now, whatever we determine, and there's 100 million different people. He was on one definition, but everybody has 100 million different definitions of it. I was interested, and I was hoping that I would hear more about that, but I didn't. I'm still hearing the student housing. I'm still hearing the big development. And so I'm hoping that as you all move forward, that there's some that you all can help in the looking at the different affordable housing, looking at the issue as a whole, and trying to rectify or trying to help us develop some different ways that we can incorporate different type of housing outside of student housing into our communities. Because one of the things that I found, I've always felt that our housing issues won't change until developers decide to participate. And I'm all about people making money. I get it. I want to make some too. But sometimes we have to find different ways that we can assist different communities differently than we do those that, I guess, as Mr. Palmer was saying, are high end or high stake properties. And I just want to think that I'm just hoping that we see more of something different and not more of the same. And that's it.
And absolutely. It's just that the affordable market is not as I don't know, homogeneous word is, as kind of the other
lucrative is the word.
Each of the projects are very specific. So it's not like a market where you look at affordable market, rates, because they're really not market driven rates, right? The way other segments of the market are. But the reason, and you were right to sort of pick up on that, the reason that Kevin Morris, who runs our national affordable housing group, is part of the team, is because of all of those municipalities I showed you on that slide. There's not one of them that hasn't said we need to drive our, workforce and affordable and mixed use housing into our communities, and we've figured out ways to drive that and still make it reasonable for developers that to want to come in and do those kind of projects. And so we're expecting that that's going to be a critically important part of probably multiple projects that we've been working on around the city. Because like you said, and you're right, affordable has a dozen different classifications. So we'll understand which of the classifications work best in which project and in which area, but it's going to be an important part of our strategy.
Thank you.
Okay, Evelyn Fox here.
Yes.
Actually, I was next.
Did you acknowledge me?
She was, and then we'll catch you next. Sorry, her hand went up and then you went off, and I thought you were gone for a little while. So, Ms.
Okay.
Fox, go ahead.
Okay, excellent presentation, but I didn't hear anything about economic development and the East Gainesville area. The housing and all of those things are wonderful, and it all depends on how you define affordable housing. But without economic development, there will be no growth in our community. So is there anything in your plan? I heard nothing about it in the presentation about trying to bring economic development in East Gainesville and affordable housing, no more student housing. Hopefully in East Gainesville, I live on Southeast 8th, and right up the street from me on 9th, there are 2 student housing. I mean, it's really crammed into our community. But I'm more concerned about how do you seek out developments. We just need some economic development in East Gainesville. There's not a bank. We're in a food desert. The only thing there is Walmart. Very few restaurants. What can we do to include some businesses that would bring economic development in East Gainesville?
Yeah, we will have some specific programs and ideas about whether it's, donation of land or other types of, programs or whatever we need to do. We will come up with a very targeted economic development program so that when we say we want to attract workforce housing or affordable housing, we know exactly what's going to be required to bring in that kind of investment into the community. So it's not the typical broad-based across across the spectrum economic development, but if it's something with regards to, if we say, you need to increase density in this part of East Gainesville to make it affordable for an affordable housing developer to come in here, we're gonna make that recommendation, and that will fall under some form of economic development proposal, but it may go hand in hand with you may have to donate the land, or you may have to do something else, whatever it will be. It will all add up to an economic development program that will make the project ultimately allowed to be successful, meaning it'll get done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Brenda Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, first and foremost to you, when you brought up the statement a second ago, you were talking about, you were asking the developer question. I would encourage you or encourage all the members of the body to go back and watch the city commission meeting when Colliers presented to the city commission. And your question may be answered there, Mr. Chair. That's first. Second, to Mr. Krasnow, Ken Krasnow? Is that his name?
Yes.
So I guess my question, we seem to be all over the map when we're talking about things. We talk about affordable housing. We're talking about economic development. We're talking about, we're everywhere, but you were talking about land acquisition. And I guess what is confusing, in as much as what you're doing is land acquisition, you're talking about getting property here, is a lot of these duties that CAPER has, as some of the functions should come under the CRA. So your presentation, when you went to present to the city commission back a month and a half ago, was kind of the cart before the horse. So nobody had ever come to talk to us. Nobody had ever talked about it, but a lot of these functions that are delineated have been delineated from the CRA to other folks. And so you have a lot of hands in the pot about what the CRA functions should be. And some of this is, okay, you brought up the issue of the power district, for example. And this is what I was afraid of when we were talking about where we cherry pick winners and losers. And you have talked about everywhere, and it's almost like what this city has an allergy to. And one of our colleagues on the board kind of alluded to it about where's economic development, but that's been the problem with our board. We're getting kind of handicapped with a lot of distraction things. So for you, the closest things we have is you brought up the power district. The power district doesn't have a problem, Mr. Krasnow, with economic development. What does in the urban core is kind of what Mr. Palmer was alluding to, and some others. And we were talking about like affordable housing. And if you look at some of the latest projects, like for Colliers, look at the blended community for Heartwood. Have you looked at that, Mr. Krasnow?
I'm not familiar. I don't know. Rory, is that the project that?
We're familiar with it, but it's not currently part of our program that we're looking at.
Okay, well, let me give you an example of where I'm going with that, Mr. Krasnow. So affordable housing, there's to every person on this board will have a different definition of what they think affordable is, especially some of the ones that have just talked about it. And what there's an allergy to, especially within East Gainesville, is we talk about things we don't have and we wonder why we don't have them, because the tax base is abysmal. And so with that development, you had a blended community, which will blend many different types of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds in a community together, from homes starting at $150,000 on up to almost $300,000, $400,000 homes. What does that mean? It amounts that no matter what your race or gender or background is or what you can afford, you're going to have people from all different backgrounds living together. That's one. And when we're talking about how do we attract economic development to East Gainesville, a lot of us hand over foot for many conversations. And so it just kind of boggles my mind when I hear some of my colleagues talk about why we don't have certain things. But when we start wanting to have those conversations, we're talking about the same things of what's the buzzword of the month. We talk about affordable housing. But what we're supposed to be talking about in this body is talking about economic development, addressing urban blight, addressing urban decay. And so when we had things like for the urban core downtown, which I think was the Hyatt, that's a symbolic of economic development. And when we're talking about things of 8th and Waldo, this is where the rubber meets the road. 8th and Waldo was presented to us last month. And the thing that we got out of that, Mr. Krasnow, was we're going to put up senior citizen housing for affordable housing on 8th and Waldo Road. And when we look at our best in our city, look at Innovation Square. If we contrast Innovation Square, there was not a lack of imagination that went into Innovation Square. There is a lack of imagination and there is a lack of energy when it comes to our urban core and it comes to the eastern part of our city. And specifically, what Caper presented to us was a lack of imagination. We're going to put a facade over a 71-year-old football stadium. We're going to put up senior housing. That lacks imagination. And it just begs to question, what are we talking about here? So Lot 10, and I know Mr. Krasnow has been a problematic going on 12 years now. That's been a problem. So I guess for us, and this was the discussion that we had with the city manager, for those of us that were at the meeting last month, was we need to have some skin in the game and some commitments that we're going to have, not lack imagination, because we need things better than putting up food trucks or affordable housing, because that's not going to do anything to attract economic development in East Gainesville. Waldo Road corridor has looked old and has looked almost the same for 35, 40 years. So for us to really have some tangential and effectual change along the corridor for 8th and Waldo and the Hawthorne Road corridor, we're going to have to do things just like we're doing with Innovation Square. We're going to have to not lack imagination. So I hear you when you're talking about the power district. It just gives me pause because I've heard those kind of discussions before. I've heard that it's almost like code. We're talking about, we're picking winners and losers. We're talking about the power district, or we're talking about certain areas of our community, ones that really haven't had the struggle for the need and investment for which this board was united created to do. Not the power district. We have Depot Park that's over there. I mean, we can go hand over fist about what projects for public-private partnerships and public investment at that when it came to what's going on. And really South Main is proof of it. The Cade Museum over and over and over again. And a lot of those are in this corridor. So I guess, Mr. Krasnow, for me is if you could help me better understand what exactly do we have, because I see you're going to talk about the real estate portion of it, but what do we have that can bring real effectual change in spite of we have almost $70 million over 10 years to spend. And if we're going to spend that talking about putting up affordable housing on 8th and Waldo Road, that is shameful. Because I think that we can do a better job and not lack imagination than to do food trucks, put up senior housing on 8th and Waldo, because if that's going to attract the John Flemings and other developers that we talk to all the time, and hoteliers and everything else to come here, I don't think so. So what do you have that is going to be effectual change that doesn't lack imagination?
Mr. Krasnow, I'm going to look over. I see Sarit has her hand up, but I think it's really Eric disguised, and ask him to add in here, and then you can come back and respond.
Behind the mask.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Yes, I'm wearing a mask tonight, so I'm in disguise. I really just want I appreciate what Member Grundy said, but I really want the board to think of Colliers as a helpful tool in the toolbox for the entire city organization, which is inclusive of the GCRA. Because I think yes, have we seen all the things that we want to see developed around our urban core and in other areas of the city, East Gainesville, et cetera, over time? No, we have not. Have we seen some things develop that are positive? Yes, we have. But I think what's important here is that Colliers should be seen as a vital and vibrant tool and a member of the team that can get us to the next level on many of these projects. And I want to emphasize that Colliers, although I'm acting as the lead with them in terms of our relationship, they have a relationship amongst many people in the city. I mean, they have a relationship with the GCRA staff. And we are trying to move forward on a team basis, which I think is the most productive way to put things together. And so I really want to encourage the board and emphasize that they're going to be very helpful, I think, in our positioning moving forward. I also want to mention that they are extremely helpful to staff on things that maybe the board does not have as big a concern about, but is a major concern of the city, like making sure that our leases are managed correctly, which, to tell you the truth, we haven't been doing a very good job of as a city.
Our what is managed correctly?
Our leases.
Oh. Okay.
Our leases for tenants that we have in different areas. And we need that support. So I am very enthusiastic and welcoming of the city commission willing to take the next step on a number of these fronts to give staff and the community resources to get the job done. Thank you.
Eric, my point is in addressing, the leases are important, but you know what is important? Like when the question I asked earlier, Eric, when we're talking about past experiences and past mistakes that we don't repeat, though we have a past historical significance of a community that has been left out. And Eric, that is not anything to take lightly. And I agree with you and wholeheartedly that Colliers should be a team. We're all in this together. On the same token, when we're all operating as a team, transparency and integrity is also important. And I think to the chair's credit of asking a very pivotal question at the very beginning of this was key. And when we're talking about communities that have been left out historically being marginalized, there is some effort that we want to do to have a conversation in a meaningful, effective way. Granted, it may be uncomfortable, but But when we're seeing the things that are being produced that are not what we were expecting, what this board, some people, folks on this board were like looking at going big or actual projects, those are the things that are disappointing. And so I'm still waiting to hear from Mr. Krasnow of what do we have that's going to be meaningful and effective other than just the power district. Do we have anything that is in the toolbox that is going to bring about meaningful and effectual change to marginalized communities in our urban in East Gainesville?
As we highlighted, I mean, we think that, you know, 8th and Waldo is a transformative development site opportunity for a true, you know, kind of public-private opportunity there. And we're just, I mean, I think we have a kickoff meeting this week. So we're just, you know, now kind of digging into it, but there was a reason that we highlighted that as one of the projects. And again, as I think somebody mentioned before, we see transformative projects in different aspects of the city, tying the city of the, you know, the fabric of the city, you know, together. So we see 8th and Waldo as one of, if not one of the most important, you know, opportunities and projects that we're going to be, you know, diving into. Do I have the exciting components, you know, laid out today? No, we're just, you know, we're just starting. But I would agree with you that if you just simply said, hey, we want affordable housing, and you just kind of, you know, dropped it in there, it would not be successful. The only affordable workforce housing projects that are sustainable and successful are part of broader mixed use, where there's other opportunities, there's some work opportunities, there's some retail opportunities, there's some, you know, other types of activities taking place in and around it. It's not just you drop in a, you know, a housing, you know, development and in and of itself. So by the very nature of the size of that district and the size of what, you know, that property and that area affords, you do have the ability to create something that is exciting and that is transformative. If you were talking about just one lot over there, then I'd say, you know, you're obviously going to be a little bit more challenged, right? You can't effectuate change with just a single, you know, piece of property or a single lot, but you have enough scale over there to drive some exciting transformative change. And that's why we highlighted, you know, 8th and Waldo as one of our projects that we wanted to dive into immediately. And like I said, we have a kickoff meeting today with this week with a number of stakeholders, of which, you know, the CRA is one of them, to incorporate all of these, you know, various ideas and aspirations into what, you know, the community and the CRA and other stakeholders, you know, want to see over there.
Mr. Krasnow, the one thing I will tell you is, and I'll leave you with this, is we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. When it came to 8th and Waldo, here's the gold in the gold mine that you have that I don't know has been presented to you. And if it's been left out to you, and maybe Mr. Bredfeld too, I don't know. But here, I'm going to leave you with this nugget. You actually don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to spend more money on studies, sir. Because you know why? When you sit here and you don't let them look far, you can look at our director of the GCRA. You can look at Sarah Vidal. You can look at that staff. Mr. Bredfeld, you can talk to Sarah Vidal. You can talk to Deborah Bowie. And guess what you're going to find out? We've had the community engagement. So what I guess I am finding somewhat rich coming from the city manager or others is this idea that we have to go back and have community engagement all over again as though it never happened, which is not true. It's not true.
I hear you. And the only piece that I would tell you that, you know, where there's maybe it's just sort of a matter of semantics, but it's important. So if as part of, and we understand there's been a lot of community engagement and we are going to build on that. But for argument's sake, let's say the community engagement said, we want to see things like Starbucks or so on and so forth there. That's great. We would then need to understand what dynamics it's going to take to get a Starbucks there, what you would have to do. And that goes back to some other commissioners' perspective about economic development. But that is, in essence, economic development. So we're going to incorporate that community engagement, but now we're going to sort of marry it with market realities and say, here's what you got to do. You want a Starbucks? Great. Here's what you got to do to get it. Or it's not going to happen. And here's where you've got to adjust some of the, the expectations. And so that's where we're going to incorporate all of the great work that Sarah and her team, and I'm sure you and other aspects of your community have done, and apply kind of a market based reality to that so that you can actually move forward with it. Does that make sense?
Thank you. It does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Member Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to offer my support. I'm optimistic that we are getting some good minds around providing some advice, consulting, thinking, and given that we're a relatively new board and its current configuration, and just the reorganization and leadership changes and everything that the city's been going through, I think we're all kind of feeling the the effects of this time, which has been somewhat in flux. But I think that one of the roles of a board like ours is to provide that oversight and that consistent kind of perspective, representing the community and others. And that's why we're here. And I think that the more minds to bear on these stubborn problems, and not just problems but opportunities, the better. And so I see this as a positive development, and I'm looking forward to some of the recommendations that are forthcoming. And if they don't meet the expectations, or if things are aren't going potentially as we would hope, then I think that that's our role at that time to stand up and say so. But at this early phase, I'm optimistic that we're going to make some good progress with the team that's in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any more hands. So I will say thank you, Mr. Krasnow and Mr. Brettfeld. And we look forward to some more conversations. This was a good presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you again. We're looking forward to working with you and having the kind of relationship where we can have that, direct, interaction, truthful, honest, transparent feedback, because that's what we ultimately need if we're gonna be successful here. So we're looking forward to our partnership with you.
Okay. Staff tells me that Mr. Sean McDermott is here. Instead of making him sit and wait through the rest of our agenda, we can give him a shot at going through some of the points that he wanted to cover. I understand there were some issues about travel, and a couple of other things have been brought up by board members. That's the limit of my understanding of your presentation, Mr. McDermott.
Yes, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This is I am Sean McDermott. I'm an assistant city attorney. I don't have so much of a presentation other than the fact that staff did bring a couple of questions to my attention that this board may have, just general legal board questions. So I'm just here to address the two that were brought to my attention, and then I'm happy to take any other questions. And Mr. Chair, I think you did mention one was just, I think a question came up, just to what extent can this board travel together to for training and to visit miscellaneous places and education and whatnot. And unfortunately, the answer to that is that's just not possible. The Sunshine Law or general open government laws in Florida are in place for good reason, to promote transparency and open government, but they also can be inconvenient, we'll say, with some stringent requirements from the state level. including the new in-person quorum requirement that I know you all are experiencing that comes directly from our governor. So, yes, the long story short there is advisory boards such as this are not able under the Sunshine Law to travel. So there has to be, the meetings have to be open, noticed, with minutes taken. The meetings have to be held within the jurisdiction, that is the city of Gainesville. And now, in fact, there has to be a quorum physically present to hold such meetings. And therefore, it's just not possible, like I said, to travel outside of the jurisdiction for any reason.
Mr. McDermott, would you want questions as we go along?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Absolutely.
Mr. Grundy Gomez had his hand up. I didn't know if it was in relation to that or
Yeah,
not.
it is. Sean, a couple of things. You're bringing up issues. Can you provide that legal opinion? And number one, and number two, that legal opinion is going to be interesting because it's going to lack consistency when it comes to other boards within the city. Number one, the Utility Advisory Board has traveled. Secondly, the Gainesville Housing Authority has examples of travel. Another one would be the Alachua County Housing Authority Advisory Board has traveled. And as a matter of fact, Mr. McDermott, we've had this discussion with Ms. Shalley about what made the Utility Advisory Board any different than what was the East Side Board. So granted, the only difference right now is we were an East Side Board at the time, and now we're the GCRA. So I guess for me is, are we cherry picking who is we're having consistency with when it comes to legal opinions and not playing semantics with it? Because that's concerning me.
The two housing authority boards you mentioned are outside of there. We don't provide legal guidance to either of those boards. So I can't speak to any legal guidance they were given. As far as the Utility Advisory Board, our office does advise that board. I'm not the direct attorney for that, and so I'm not aware of any instance of them traveling. And know that the advice would be the same for them as it is for any advisory boards, including our commission, and that is that there's just no travel as a group allowed. Remember, the Sunshine Law applies to a meeting of a city board or body. And a meeting is when at least two members are together, or rather when they're having any kind of discussions or taking part in any type of official business. It doesn't have to be necessarily together in person. It can be even on the phone. The Sunshine Law applies to telephone conversations. As we see right here, virtual meetings. So, but again, when it's at least two members of the same board or commission that is communicating about official business, that is a subject, a discussion that is subject to the Sunshine Law and has to be in the sunshine. And so, that's all to say, like, the Sunshine Law doesn't just pertain to a single member of this body or anybody. So, as far as traveling individually and whatever, there's an infinite hypotheticals, but I will just say again that as a board together, it's just not able under the Sunshine Law of Florida to travel outside of the jurisdiction. And so, that's
Okay.
really. And the second matter that was brought to my attention was it was a general question just about voting conflicts and just a real quick refresher on the Florida's ethics laws, which are found in Chapter 112 of the Florida statutes. And they're fairly easy to remember, but it's essentially that members of this advisory board, you have to abstain from voting if what the matter that you're voting on could have a special private gain or loss to yourself or a family member or a business associate. And unfortunately, those terms aren't defined they're not defined at all in state law. So ethics laws are notoriously, they can sound clear cut at first, but then, they're easy to miss as you really get, into the day-to-day business of a board. And so my office is here to give strictly advisory opinions on matters of ethics. And the reason I say that is because ethics law is a little more nuanced to where it's actually the board member's personal responsibility to know and interpret the ethics laws. And if you have any questions, again, I'm here to kind of help you in an advisory capacity, but we always strongly recommend that you contact the Florida Commission on Ethics, because they can give you a binding. They'll walk through whatever factual situation you may have, and they can give you a binding opinion in one way or the other. But just, again, remember that, like, any matters that come before your board, if you, a business associate or a family member of yours, could have a special private gain or loss from that, however that vote comes out, then you cannot vote on that matter. And you have to disclose it. There's a form you have to fill out, and you can't vote on that matter. However, you are allowed to discuss the matter. That's a distinction with advisory boards as opposed to governing bodies like the city commission. But whereas you can't vote, you are allowed to discuss the matter. So so that's just basic voting conflict law, and those were the two matters that were brought to my attention. I'm happy to take questions about those or anything else if anybody has any.
Mr. Chair, I have one more.
Yes, Mr. Grenda Gomez has one, and then Mr. Palmer.
Mr. Chair, I have a third one, and I actually did call the Commission on Ethics. Mr. McDermott, when I contacted the Commission on Ethics, Florida Ethics and Sunshine also governs constitutional and charter officers, correct, sir?
Ethics laws, any public officer is subject to ethics laws, including myself or any city staff. The Sunshine Law, that's not the case. The Sunshine Law only applies to public boards and commissions, which doesn't include, individual staff members.
So when individual members of this board, they're going to be voting on something, are meeting with charter officers individually, but they're going to have a voting decision or are meeting something outside of the body and have discussions on it with other members of the body outside of a public meeting, that would not only be unethical, it would be a violation of Sunshine Law, correct? Especially when you have a charter officer crystallizing the vote. That's not unethical?
You said, would that be a violation of the Sunshine Law? And that's not correct. Keep in mind, the ethics laws are distinct from the Sunshine Law. Sunshine Law is just the requirement that the meetings of a public board or commission have to be open, noticed, with minutes taken. There's only a meeting of that board or commission if 2 or more members are together in some capacity with discussion.
So a charter officer coming to the board to crystallize a vote, to have members of the body saying, how are you going to vote? That's in bounds?
As far as the Sunshine Law is concerned, that has no Sunshine Law implications. Members of this board are able, without any violation of the Sunshine Law, to meet and discuss, matters with other members of other boards or commissions, say even elected officials.
Well, I'm only saying on this one.
It's permissible to, a member of this board to meet with a commissioner or meet with a city staff person. What's not permissible outside of the Sunshine Law is for a member of this board to meet with another member of this board. So that's how the Sunshine Law works. And
I'm sorry. Let me reframe this, because we're getting off on other boards. I'm only talking about this board. So for a charter officer, and I want to be very clear, I don't want to play semantics with Mr. McDermott, with a charter officer for decisions, even if it's a major, something that could be possibly quasi-judicial, that is coming before this body to discuss and lobby to crystallize a vote. I want to talk about pure ethics, not and even the nuances of it. Is it ethical for a charter officer to come here to crystallize a vote or to lobby members on something that he or she has coming before this body and is presenting to us and knowing that we have to vote on it.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, so now you're talking outside of the sunshine, and
That's exactly right.
sunshine law would be, like I said, inapplicable. Regarding ethics, that's very factual dependent, and I don't know the instances of this situation, you know, you're discussing. And so that would be, you know, that would just depend on the facts and what is discussed and the nature of the business and whatnot. And that will come down to the personal responsibility of either the public officer, whether it's a charter officer or any city staff person, and the personal responsibility of a board member. And in those cases, you know, again, the typical, you know, what I would always strongly encourage is if you're, you know, if there's at all ever a question, to just contact the Florida Commission on Ethics, and they are they're notoriously very responsive. They're not, you know, you don't have to be afraid of you know, a state kind of level agency where you feel like you may get the runaround, for lack of a better term, but that's not the case. They're notoriously very, very responsive. They will very quickly answer your question and are very helpful in that capacity. So that's what I would recommend in whatever ethics questions you may have, or whoever it is.
Okay, Mr. Palmer?
Hi, I guess, so can you clarify for me again what the procedure might be for kind of getting clarity on how some of these things go? Because I mean, you're here to discuss largely because I brought up something. I mean, I don't know if I should, you know, touch back on the issue, but it was something that was directly related to me and something I said. And so I'm still trying to, I'd like to clarify that, because I mean, I'm a little confused on it, because you know, I was hoping to push forward with a program that I know a bunch of businesses are really excited about, and it is something that I was also trying to be part of. And then that, you know, and that has been publicly available since well before we started pushing the idea, you know, before we really started talking about this process. And then I didn't hear about this becoming an issue until say a meeting afterwards, after I had raised some contention about something else.
Yeah, I'll happy to answer any specific questions. I'll be honest, I don't know the circumstances of what you're mentioning, if this has anything to do with what we, you know, were just discussing about meeting with a charter officer or whatnot.
No, this was you know, the way this was brought to me, and I don't know if this meeting, the conversation I had, was supposed to have been private or whatever, but basically, you know, I think some of the issue that has been raised is that I am really I had been very in support of the business improvement grant program. I have a business that has applied for the business improvement grant. I am certainly under no delusion that when it comes to making the decision on whether my business should get that, I should recuse myself. But I'm a little confused on why me, you know, promoting that as a business seems to have kind of, you know, seems like it sparked this discussion, or like how that, you know, it feels like that's kind of what came into play here.
Yeah, and again, I don't know, you know, as much as I can say is I don't know, I just honestly don't know the details of your case, other than what you just mentioned. But, you know, and so maybe I think the reason, you know, staff just mentioned it to me briefly last week and said, you know, that it could be helpful to give a refresher here, is just because it's not uncommon that you know, although when board members, you know, become appointed to a new board and you're given all the materials and how, you know, the laws that apply to you, including sunshine law and ethics and whatnot, it's not uncommon for, you know, once you kind of get into the weeds, to be like, oh yeah, like how does this work again? And like, how, you know, when am I supposed to abstain from voting and whatnot? And so, you know, so that's all to say, staff thought it would be just helpful to give a refresher in this capacity. And I think in your case, it does sound like the voting conflict law would apply. And like you just mentioned, whenever that matter comes before this board in any capacity that requires a vote, at that point, you would want to register a conflict, which is, I mean, again, that's standard procedure. There's a quick 1-page form. It's pretty simple to fill out. And you would want to fill out that form and declare that you have a conflict. And then you can't vote on that matter, of course, but the benefit of being an advisory board as opposed to the city commission is that you can fully discuss the matter still after you declare that conflict. So yeah, so that's the first ethics issue that pops into my mind, and you want to be cognizant of. Another one is there are certain requirements in Florida's ethics laws that you can't use any information that the general public otherwise wouldn't have to your advantage. And it sounds like you said this was all like public knowledge already.
Yeah, and I've been trying to be, my stance on this has been, let me be very vocal with what I've been trying to do for the sake of transparency, and trying to support the business improvement grant is something that I think is even outside of me, that I know affects a bunch of other people. I mean, maybe I don't know if this is a conversation we'd be having right now, or this should be a different type of conversation. But yeah, I guess that's how this relates to it. And I know the decision making after the fact doesn't necessarily affect me directly, because it ultimately goes to somebody else to make the final decision. But the idea that program moves forward is something that I think affects a lot of people.
Yeah, and most, and that was like the third ethics question or matter that I was going to bring up, just to be cognizant of, is outside of even voting for matters, there are certain ethic prohibitions on even on doing business with one's agency, or having a contract with one's agency. And what that means is just there's certain prohibitions on board members, like I said, either doing, like, if you're a city commissioner, for example, there's certain prohibitions on you having contracts with the city, or doing business with the city in different capacities and taking part in different programs. However, that's not all inclusive, because if there's programs that are just open generally to the public, then that's not impermissible to avail yourself of that, even if you are on a public board or commission of that jurisdiction. And that's where, so on the one hand, like I said, if it's a general program open to the public, city parks, for instance, if you're a city commissioner, there's nothing wrong with going to city parks and whatnot. And that's at the extreme one end. And the other end is, you can't have this, if you're a city commissioner or a board member, you can't have a contract with the city where you're, like, say, a consultant of the city. But in between there's a lot of open ground that's just so factual dependent, and that's where, if there's any questions in the middle there, that's where a quick phone call to the Florida Commission on Ethics would be really helpful, because they could walk you through whether there's an issue at all. And it doesn't sound like there is, but just from what I'm hearing, is for that third ethics issue. But again, it could be helpful just to contact the Florida Commission on Ethics.
Okay.
They have an 800 number, and like I said, they're very responsive to requests like that. So.
Okay. Do you happen to have that number, or should I just look it up?
Well, I do. I can pull it up real quick, and then and and I don't expect board members to have this at your fingertips all the time, but like when you're first appointed to a board, you're given, it's just FYI, you're given materials that do have all this electronically. So you should have it. If you don't, we'll be happy to give it out again. But
okay, yeah, this is my I mean, more or less one of my first boards, so I'd like to make sure, and I know some other people are of the same position, but yeah, I'd like to just obviously make sure I'm doing everything with transparency and
Yeah, absolutely.
appropriately.
Of course. And yeah, and the Florida Commission on Ethics, I have their number here if you want to jot it down.
Mhm.
It's 850-488-7864.
7864. All right, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Member Seawright, you have your hand up, and then Ms. Bowie.
Yes, sir. I just want to make some comments and really to Mr. Palmer, because I'm listening to this and I don't want him to get discouraged. You know, over my years of being affiliated with the CRA, most of the best projects have come from board members. And I have to say that. I mean, I know at one time, most of everything in College Park and downtown projects came from persons who were actually members of those advisory boards. And they did just as Sean's discussed. They just brought up their project, they discussed it, and they recused themselves from the vote. So I don't want you to get discouraged, because like I said, I think because you're a member of the board and because of whatever it is you do, and I think you're a realtor and whatever those things, there will be times that you may have projects that are great for the GCRA, and I'm listening to this, and I don't want anybody else who might be listening to get discouraged as a board member, to don't think that if they have a good project of a program or something they want to participate in, that they still do. Because like you say, it sounds difficult, it sounds, it can get to the point where it sounds like it's confusing, but it's really as simple as, if you have a project, bring it to the board, you can discuss it, you just can't vote on it. And I just wanted to say that, because I don't want anyone to get discouraged if they have something or they want to participate in something. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Member Seawright.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowie.
Thank you. Sorry, I was literally between two meetings. The city county meeting was at the same time. So I got here fully into this to hear the comments. And I want to clarify a couple of things. So one, we're not having this discussion because of something that happened with any particular member. Internally, I have been discussing with Sarah and her team about, I think all the boards and agencies, frankly, should be doing this, and that is providing ethics training for their board members. For many people, I think I just heard Member Palmer say this is the first time he served on an advisory board. So if you don't know, you don't know. And I can tell you that these are not uncommon issues from any board of directors. When I ran United Way for 3.5 years, we frequently had board members who, yes, we in good effort would have to disclose where they also served as board members for agencies in which we were providing funding. So the disclosure is important, but the voting is a completely separate matter. So, for us, the conversation, and this has come up a few times, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks. So there are always good examples that we can use. I don't want anyone to feel like we're picking on them. What I want to be able to say, though, is if this is your first time serving on a board, a good rule of thumb is if you have the ability to personally benefit from any action that's taken by the advisory group, you shouldn't vote on it. If you have questions about that, you should absolutely be reaching out to staff. We can help you, connect you with Sean, so that you can be comfortable and that what you are doing is appropriate. And disclosing it is, certainly appropriate. But if there are questions, clearly you guys are board members and you're involved in the community. Some of you are business owners, and we get that. But please know that our interest is to make sure that you stay out of trouble, because at the end of the day, to say you didn't know something is it's really not a defense, and it's our job to make sure that we bring these issues before the body. One, to provide the knowledge and the training so that you all can feel good about the decisions we're asking you to make. So this was a discussion that had been long planned, but frankly, you all know we've had so many other things on the agenda in the last couple of weeks, we weren't able to have this conversation. So again, the issue is voting, and I would just say, if you stand to gain in any way, always ask before, but it's better really, in my opinion, to abstain from the vote. Clearly, I think the point being made that many of the members will have excellent ideas for staff to follow up on. That's pretty different from voting. So just to be able to put a ribbon on it, we're here to help. We want to make sure that we're arming you with the right information. I really think that it would be, it's our job to make sure that we have these kinds of discussions and probably on an annual basis. There are a lot of new faces, and for a lot of people in the community, they've never served in this capacity before. So not dissimilar from other boards and agencies that I have either participated in or frankly been the executive director for. So I just wanted to clear that up because I don't want anyone to have a sense that we're picking on anyone, but there are questions that have come up in the last couple of weeks about conversations between staff and board members, and when is it appropriate to bring something up, and should I vote on it? So we're here for that. And I just wanted to clarify that, and thank you.
Thank you. I'll reiterate, staff is your best friend. If you ever have a question, call staff. Mr. Grundy Gomez has another question.
Mr. Chair, not a question, so much a comment. And I appreciate Ms. Bowie and staff bringing that to our attention, because it is very consultative for a lot of us to have that insight and input, because we all could be put in a position that we don't intend to. Mr. McDermott, I would say, would it be a good rule of thumb if it feels questionable or doesn't feel right? Maybe that's probably a good rule of thumb, is to trust your instincts and to not vote if it doesn't feel right. If you think that this could be possibly questionable, why go down that path? Would that be basically a good rule of thumb?
Yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb, I guess, is, to be, rather be safe than sorry, I guess you can say. I will say you do have in the state of Florida, I mean, not to complicate matters, but you have a statutory duty to vote on every matter. So you can't just not participate or not vote lightly. But on the other hand, like we just discussed, there are certain times, like with voting conflicts, when you are also statutorily required to not vote. So, so your gut is one thing, but I think maybe the better course of action is to try to sort that out prior to go time. And the best way to do that is to contact any staff members, including myself. Or
right, but Mr. McDermott, I'm not saying, obviously, for clarity, and I kind of feel like we go down. Yes, we have a statutory responsibility to vote on everything, but we're talking about in matters where you have to disclose why you're not voting. That's my point. I wasn't talking about not just voting just for the, well, I don't want to vote on this issue, so I'm not going to vote. I'm talking about in cases where if it doesn't feel right and you have a conflict, you disclose it and you disclose why you're not voting, correct? That's what I was getting at, for clarity.
Oh, absolutely, yes. You do.
That's what I was getting at, sir.
You do have to disclose that you're not voting and declare why, that you have a voting conflict. So, yeah, absolutely. And I know. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all. I just wanted to provide you clarity. I don't want you to think I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and didn't know what I was saying.
Oh, no.
No, that's all. I mean, Ms. Bowie was being very consultative, and I'm just saying, for us as a good rule of thumb, if you feel like you have a conflict and internally you think it's going to be a problem, you would know that. You internally should know that inside, like, this might be a problem. As a good rule of thumb, I'm going to disclose I possibly have a conflict. This may be an issue, and I'm going to say why, and then I'm going to recuse myself. That's all.
Yeah, and again, yeah, I would agree with that, and yeah, I won't belabor the point that there are some times when it happens with the city commissioners, maybe more than anybody, but where they don't realize you have a voting conflict till it's in front of you. And so, right, in those cases in particular, you would, of course, just want to exercise caution to not, to stay out of those situations. And with that all said, I will say, my last comment would be, this is just a couple questions that we touched on tonight. I'm happy at any point, either as a board, I know you guys deal with a lot of business, so, your agendas are always full. So whenever you feel it's best, if ever, like, I'm happy to do like a refresher training as often as you want, to hit what I call like the legal essentials that any board member needs to know. But I'm happy to do that in any capacity. So whether it's like, on your agenda to the whole board, or if you just want to reach out to me and, one-on-one, we can kind of give you the rundown of what you need to know. I'm happy to do that as well. So that's it. Thank you for your service. And unless there's any other questions, I'll leave you to your business.
All right. I see no more hands up.
All right. Thank you.
That's a good sign. Our next item is entitled All in the Family Program.
Hello. Yes, I'll be giving that presentation. Let me.
Are you going to sing the theme song, Chelsea?
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Only it were that fun. All right, well, good evening, everybody. Just for the record, my name is Kelsey Bakaitis, and I am a project manager with the GCRA. The reason I am here is because on August 31st, the City Commission asked our staff to return with details and funding for an heirs property assistance program. The working title suggested by Commissioner Ward was All in the Family, but that can be discussed more as a board if you wish. Just to kind of give you guys a background history, an heirs property is when a homeowner passes away without leaving a will or an estate plan. And when that happens, property becomes fractured among multiple members. And this can cause a lot of problems or loss of ownership, as I'll get into later. Currently, there are 282 heirs properties within the GCRA district. This makes up about 1/3 of all heirs property in Gainesville. So the GCRA makes a big chunk of what we're dealing with in the city. The benefits of clearing a title for an heirs property include the property gains homestead tax exemption, and the property can become eligible for local and state grants like repair grants or FEMA or disaster mitigation. It's easier to get repair and maintenance loans from a bank, and it's also means that the homeowner has better negotiating leverage for a mortgage modification or refinancing if there's only one owner on the property. The purpose of the heirs property program, as given by the City Commission, is to increase neighborhood stability by growing individual wealth and access to property ownership within neighborhoods. The proposed offerings of the program would be first preventative in nature, and that would be in the form of estate planning and helping people write a will. And the second would be corrective, and that would be probate litigation, and that is when when someone seeks legal help to clear a title so that the house only has one owner instead of fractured ownership by multiple family members. In order to be eligible, the property must be in the GCRA district, and the applicant must make at or below the Gainesville median income. Other program elements, including the name, are up for your discussion today. We have $35,000 budgeted for 2021. This is just a good start. Our estimate is we could do about 18 to 19 grants with that money if certain things are met. Department and city plans all support this program. The GCRA plan has specific areas for community enhancement and housing. There's a lot of focus on Duval, Fifth Avenue, and Pleasant Street. These neighborhoods are also where the majority of heirs properties are concentrated. The program also supports attainable housing for individuals, and the program prevents population turnover because it helps people stay in their neighborhoods instead of losing their home. This is also supported by the city's strategic action agenda and affordable housing action plan. This prevents houses from becoming vacant and encourages properties to stay in use. So the next steps will be to solicit a law firm. We'll kind of provide them money so they can provide the legal advice, and we will work with them to identify program documents and make the program efficient and impactful for the district. I'll be taking this presentation to the City Commission in January with your feedback, and then I'll come back to you, the advisory board, with draft program documents for our February meeting, I hope. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm very interested in hearing your feedback today.
Ms. Seawright?
Yes, I think this is an amazing program. I do have one question for you, Chelsea. How are you looking to get your grant recipients? Are you all going to post it? And the reason why I ask is I manage a rehab program, and unfortunately, I've had to turn several persons away, and they're under 200% of the poverty level. So I'm sure that won't be a issue as to, but how will you do it? Because I would love to refer those persons to them, because we spend time that we really don't have we work with some of those families who have like easier. Usually it's just them and a brother, and then we can help that. But when it's 4 or 5 different siblings it does take a little bit more time. So will you be taking referrals from agencies? I would love to be a part of that. So just was wondering, because it didn't really say how you said you're going to pay an attorney, but it didn't say how you're going to get those recipients.
Yeah, so we haven't quite fleshed that out, but we would be doing kind of what it typically takes. And I think referrals is actually a really good idea. And I think that's something that we'll have to reach out to your group and other groups about. I hadn't thought that far ahead, to be completely honest, but thank you. So,
okay, but
yeah,
thank you. I would love to help anyway, because I think this is an amazing program.
Thank you.
Ms. Turner Evans.
Sure. So I also think it's a great program as well. And I did have a question about the selection of candidates for recipients of the grant. I think one thing to consider is that when you're looking at who will be eligible for the program, to make it wide enough, right? So that if one person in the family is applying for it, it may have to be all of the siblings being considered as well. And that's one of the issues in terms of, heirs property. Everyone needs to sign off. Everyone needs to, kind of come together to make sure that these houses aren't lost. And so I've seen this a lot in certain communities. I mean, there's a house over by Eastside High School has been going through this probate process for a number of years. I think probably close to 7 or 8. No one's living there, but it's starting to get, it's starting to deteriorate. And so I think this program will help out a lot with that. And so I'm definitely looking to hear more about it going forward. So thank you for the presentation.
Member Randy Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chelsea, good job. I think it's a very good project. I have some question about your funding sources. It's one thing, are we going to look at a diversification of funding sources and revenue streams, Chelsea, for this? Can you provide any insight? And then I have a follow-up.
So right now we're just keeping the program simple and see how 2021 goes. And so we're just using GCRA funding from the Attainable Housing Strategy Fund.
Okay, so I have a question for Ms. Bowie or for Ms. Vidal with respect to that. If somebody could help me understand, this is where, could any of these funds come out of general fund? Because this is what we were talking about earlier, because this is a laudable program. My thing is, we're getting nickel and dime, and this is something that's coming forward, but not addressing to where we can start spending on the bigger projects. We're doing the smaller projects again. I guess this is just where my frustration comes from. Chelsea, not a reflection on you, but just overall in the funding scheme from the manager or direction we're going. I feel like we're getting nickel and dimed with smaller things and not addressing what we need to. So if Ms. Bowie or Ms. Vidal could help square that circle for me.
Armando, this is Sarah Vidal. I was just going to mention that this actually came as commission direction to the GCRA. And what we were asked by the city manager to do was to kind of wrap our arms around these 2 ideas, do some initial research, see if there are programs like that available that, so we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. But basically, the reason Chelsea's coming to you all is to, get your feedback, for you all to kind of help us think through, is there something that we need to really think about in regards to these neighborhoods that we're trying to serve with this program, and then take it forward in January to the commission to make sure that we're on the right page with what they envisioned. And then we would come back with the program documents. So I hear you. The money that will be used for this was specifically for these types of programs. We knew with kind of an enhanced focus on affordable housing, which, in the old CRA model, it was market rate and affordable. So we're honing in more on layering different solutions for parts of the redevelopment district. And this will become, if approved, just one of the programs in kind of our suite of programs that will move forward. If you wanted to ask the question about general government funding, you could certainly propose something that will carry forward, and we will also carry forward all the feedback received tonight.
Yeah, Ms. Vidal or Mr. Chair, what I was going to ask you was, and Sarah, this is not directed at staff. Obviously, we harken back to, like, we have an entire housing department, and I get it that it's a direction coming from the city commission. I get it as a goal, but when we have capital funds and we have interlocal agreements, it's kind of, this is Mr. Chair, this is where the frustration sets in. Of where we were designed as a board to do, we're seeming to lose track of that and lose focus on that. And if we're just going to be the affordable housing board, then we need to be the affordable housing board, but we're not doing anything economic development. But I get it, and that's not at staff. So Ms. Vidal, thank you for that clarity. Chelsea, thank you for it, because the truth of the matter is where I agree with Chelsea, member Turner Evans, and the other person or member Seawright, was that there is a large portion of this where heirs properties could have an economic impact, especially within East Gainesville. I don't deny that. I'm just focusing on what the direction of why we have this interlocal agreement of $70 million, and we haven't seemed to get anything anywhere to it because we've been just nickel and diming little stuff. But I also get it. So I guess my feedback, Sarah, would be that, fine, you keep tasking us with this, and this is what I was afraid of us not being able to get to the project. And I think I heard it from some other board members at our last meeting, and even the chair, I've heard say it before, we really would like to start getting the projects that we were talking about that we set on a project list. And it seems like we never are getting to those. We're getting to these smaller things. And I know they tug at people's heartstrings. I get it. And there's a lot of people on here that will, for whatever reason, they have a need. If you're a realtor, I get it. That's going to be up your alley. You're going to be like, I want more affordable housing. I want to address it because, I get it. But for people that are also wanting to, bring economic opportunity and address these things, that's where it's coming from. So Chelsea, I agree. This program is meaningful. And I think, I agree with member Turner Evans and member Seawright, absolutely, to address this. I just think that this needs to go to the housing department and come out of general fund and not out of the GCRA budget. That's my angst with this, with where this is coming from. Not the project itself, but the funding of it. That's all. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Member Bush.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a quick comment to staff in terms of the feedback on the naming. I think that the All in the Family title's clever and maybe could have some marketing, and kind of marketing to potential participants, some interest there. But I would just suggest that it might be helpful to be more direct in terms of an official name for the program, because people may not really understand what the program is intended to do if you cover it in kind of a marketing tagline. So I would just recommend that we be more clear that this is for heirs property, because that is a very specific term that has, certain meanings. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Seawright, you had your hand up. Did you just take it down?
Yeah, take it down. I changed my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Good discussion, good presentation. Any other comments?
I just wanted to add, Member Gomez, I think listening to you, I will share with you that I hear some of the same feedback from the housing staff, by the way, right? Where some of the feedback from them is, for some of our initiatives, why is this coming out of housing? So to your point, the dust is not settled in all of those places, and we're trying to work that out. We're trying to work that out behind the scenes as we speak. Yeah.
Well, Ms. Bowie, I stand corrected. Touche. Good point.
Member Merritt put his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chelsea, for the presentation. I think this program is wonderful for our area. I do have a question in regards to legal counsel. Will it be provided by local attorneys or any attorney in the state of Florida that's willing to take the case or contract?
That's a good question. I'm working on the RFP right now. We're hoping that the parameter will be a Gainesville attorney, but we'll have to see once we get all that paperwork together.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say I do agree with Mr. Bush in the recommendation of a more direct name. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any more raised hands. We can move on to the next item called Welcome Back. Might be another marketing name.
All right, let me
Y'all are into hip hop today, aren't you? I mean, really great day.
All right, good evening again, everybody. Again, for the record, my name is Chelsea Bakaitis, and I'm a GCRE project manager. This was another program that was suggested at the August 31st City Commission meeting. They asked us to return back with details and a dollar amount. This program is designed to incentivize people to move back to their childhood neighborhood or former neighborhood they may have lived in. So the purpose the City Commission laid out in suggesting this program is to prevent rapid demographic community change and gentrification in GCRE neighborhoods, with the intent being to create neighborhood stability by helping people invest in their future through home ownership. The program offers $25,000 for people to buy or build a home in their former neighborhood. The eligible neighborhoods under this program are those that are experiencing the most rapid change or threat of gentrification, and that's Fifth Avenue, Pleasant Street, Porters, and Spring Hill. And at the end, if there are any other neighborhoods you would like to suggest we include in this program, I would love to hear that. So part of eligibility is that the applicant must have been a resident before 2010, for at least 3 years before 2010, and they will have to prove their eligibility. We're still working on that criteria, but so far some criteria they can use to prove their former residency might be old property deeds, maybe if their parents owned a house, or a rental lease if they were just a renter, driving records, school records, an affidavit from maybe a neighbor, just something so we can prove that they had lived there for 3 years prior to 2010. We have $75,000 worth of funds allocated for 2021. This will provide 3 grants. This may not seem like a lot, but we're just going to see what we accomplish and what the interest is for this first year and move forward from there. This program is supported by the GCRA plan and the city plans. This program has a direct community benefit and works to maintain culture and population of a neighborhood, which was a main priority within the housing element of the GCRA plan. The plan also favors that additional housing stock be built and the infill development happens in the neighborhoods that this program specifically targets. Infill development is also a goal of both the city's strategic action agenda and the affordable housing action plan. Both of these plans call that displacement is that we combat displacement caused by gentrification. So the next steps on this project will be to, what we're doing today, continue to get advisory board feedback, and then I'll be taking this presentation to the City Commission in January, and then I'll come back with draft program documents in February. Then we'll move on to advertising the program and move forward with the application process. All right, thank you for your time, and I'm very interested in hearing your feedback and recommendations.
Member Brenda Gomez.
I understand it's a laudable project. For me, I would much rather this be a first-time home buyers program. This just comes off kind of patriarchal in nature. It also comes off kind of patronizing in a way too. But I think if we were going to go down this path, it would have much more meaningful impact for first-time home buyers, or being able to help folks get into housing rather than just helping them, quote, move back. I guess it's all in how we marketed that. So I think the approach is laudable. I just think it would have more impact in how we're marketing it, Chelsea, to staff. And I want to hear the feedback of some of my colleagues, but I don't know, just if this was a first-time homeowners buyer program, I think it would be that way. But because it's basically like, just imagine, like, if I was in Philadelphia, right, or a city, and I want to move back to a certain section of town, I'm going to say, I'm going to take 100 acres of land and just move everybody back. But people evolve, things change, but I understand where we're going. But sometimes neighborhoods change, they just change over time. But there's a lot of people that are that are renting, that want to be homeowners. They could take advantage of something like this. So I think it's who are we trying to capture rather than get back? What about people that are currently displaced or are in they're renting high apartments or condominiums or whatever? Those people we could attract. What if they want to get home? They're not coming back. They want to be welcome to a place. So I think it would be more inclusive and less exclusive, because exclusivity is passé. And so I think that the more inclusive we can be with the program like this, I think that would have more meaningful impact than just how it's presented like this.
Thank you, Armando. Oops, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I had forgotten to mention that this program is open to former residents, but also current renters. So if you're a current renter in the neighborhood, you can apply.
Okay, I didn't hear you say that.
Because we're trying to incentivize homeownership. So I'm sorry,
Okay.
I did not say that. So, but that's,
Okay,
I think that's a good element. Thank you.
That changes some of the ballgame then a little bit. I still think I'm going to take a page, Member Bush. I'm going to borrow from Member Bush how we market it. I was in jest in saying that we're using some hip hop references, but I wasn't joking, because you already talking about welcome back. But I think if we are narrowly tailoring it, marketing this appropriately, and how we direct it is going to really make all the difference. But just make sure that it doesn't come off patriarchal as well, and how we approach it.
Okay, Member Merritt, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chelsea, thank you for the presentation. My question may be too early, but in regards to this grant, would it be allowed that the home buyer would be eligible for other programs such as NHDC or the SHIP program, first time home buyers, or would that not be an issue?
That wouldn't be necessarily built into this program. They would have to, because we're having very open qualifications, so someone might not qualify for those programs, but qualify for ours. But if you'd like to make a recommendation concerning the tie-in to those programs, that's definitely something we can look into.
Okay, well, I mean, that's my question, if they can receive your services as well as some of the other services as well.
Oh, I see, because sometimes they don't. Yes, they can still receive our services and those services as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
See, right?
Oh, yeah, two things. I'm just going to piggyback on what Chelsea said. That's not going to be necessarily true. So you're going to have to figure out because I know if someone, for instance, if you give one of the homeowners $25,000, what that does is it shows that they have more money. So then they might put them out of being eligible for some of the other programs that do home buyers. But so you just check on that just to be sure. But what I was gonna follow up on was something that Member Gomez said, because he asked the question about new persons coming into the neighborhood, and you said it would be available to current renters. Is that current renters in those neighborhoods or anybody who's renter and becoming a new homeowner in that neighborhood? Because that's different.
Current renters in those neighborhoods who have lived there since 2010.
Okay.
Long-term residents. I apologize.
Yeah. So what he was asking was somebody who never lived there before, who lives somewhere else and decides they want to move into the neighborhood. What, is that acceptable? Or, but you answered him by saying, yes, if they're a current renter in the neighborhood, but that's not what he was asking. He was asking about somebody who's never lived there before. Could they also occupy, when you say new persons, can they also participate in the program?
No, they cannot.
Okay. Because that's what he was asking. If I'm not mistaken, Member Gomez was asking that.
All right. Member Palmer.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I think most of my question was asked by Ms. Member Seawright. I'm just kind of trying to figure out, I'm curious about the timing of when that money would show up for people, whether it comes at the front, counting for, into their income, or whether there might be something where, maybe I don't even know if this is a feasible solution, but say they can qualify for a mortgage, this be a $25,000 payment directly as an equity payment to their mortgage. So it's almost like they suddenly have that equity now after the fact. I don't even know feasibility or logistics of that, but that might be a way that, it actually gives somebody a reason to stay in their home, and, rather than having to try and come up front with it or something. Cause I'm personally thinking, I've got a couple of neighbors, I've got neighbors directly across the street from me who I would, as soon as this program's available, I'm going to be knocking on their door saying, how can I help you get, which maybe I need to recuse myself from this, but how can I help you qualify for this program? Because I think to me, this seems like an awesome program.
Okay, Member Turner Evans.
So I also, feel like this program sounds like a good idea and something that could potentially slow gentrification. I just wonder about the long-term feasibility. So for $75,000, that could help, 3 families or 3 individuals move back to the neighborhood for 2021. But going forward, would it be those same, that same $75,000 or, that limit to 3 families? Are you looking to expand it after a while? Or is this kind of like a pilot? Let's see how it goes and, see if we're successful in that.
Exactly. Yes. This would be kind of a pilot and see if they're successful. And I'd like to see the program get expanded, but it also depends on other projects we're doing. And such.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chelsea.
We're going to Gomez.
First of all, thank you to Member Stephanie Seawright for understanding my point. The other point, Chelsea, I think there's not going to be, without question, the program won't be successful. It will be successful, but for longevity's sake, another point of contention and that you may want to do is going to be overall funding. And I don't want, us to, on a laudable good project, to spite our nose, shoot our nose out to spite our face, is we want to look at other multiple revenue streams as a way of getting funding, building public-private partnerships for funding, getting other dollars, whether that be from the county, whether that be from other agencies, whether that be federal dollars, because the county has a rapid rehousing program right now and how they're doing housing. Number 2 is, again, I want to tell you that Member Seawright exactly picked up, and I wasn't clear to you on exactly what I was asking, but she picked up on what I was asking. So to me this is where I'm going to recommend we do some changes to the program, if you don't mind. So the changes that I would like to make, I want to get feedback of the commission, is we can be more inclusive in the program, allowing people, and I guess my camera's jacked. I am going to recommend that we can't make a motion, but Chelsea, I'm going to make sure that you talk about, we need to allow people who live on the outside to move, to be able to, who are renting, to be able to quote unquote come back or welcome back home, or not welcome back, welcome to their home, welcome home. come home or get a home, something else. But you're going to get more fish by being more inclusive. So right now, the language right now is exclusive. And so I want us to be more inclusive. So if you or staff, Chelsea, can go back to the drawing board to make this even more inclusive to bring to the city commission, that's going to be what I ask for you to do, as well as get fish for as many multiple revenue streams. And so, yes, I will be there at the commission meeting when you present, as you know I will, and give my 2 cents. But I think it's laudable what you're doing, and I want to thank you, staff, for this. Good job. But I just think we could make some tweaks to be more inclusive. That's all. Thank you, Member Seawright.
Member Seawright, you have your hand back up.
Yeah, so I want to kind of, so I know what the intent, I think I understand what the intent is in the program, and I like the intent, and I hear what Member Gomez is saying, and I don't disagree 100%. However, what he's asking for in those tweaks is the model block program. And that's the program that I think we just sunset or might not be doing anymore, because that was doing the same thing, allowing anybody who wanted to buy in that particular area, because that's where we built the homes, to get that grant in order to move in. I like the idea of opening up to everybody, but because I know the intent is to bring back those persons who feel like they've been displaced from their communities, I think that you can do two of the same by having a preference that, or a priority, not a preference, a priority that those persons who used to live in that neighborhood and want to come back would be a priority. But that if we have this program, it just doesn't sit open and we don't get that particular person to apply. And then we can open it up to anybody else. But I think because of the intent of what I think what you have is the Welcome Back program, is to bring back some of those families who've been displaced or feel like they've been displaced, but make them a priority. However, so the program isn't stagnant, that you have this open and you're not getting the applicant that you're looking for, that you can go to those other applicants who are just trying to be welcome into the community. That's just my thoughts as you're looking to make those recommendations.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I had a question to Member Seawright, and then I want to relate it back to Chelsea. Member Seawright, does Front Porch have any overlap with their program from the state level on this?
I don't think Front Porch Florida gets any additional. I don't think there's no funding for that anymore. I think once that you have that designation, but I don't think they're receiving funding, because I think the Front Porch Florida funding sunsetted a while ago. But they're still designated a Front Porch Florida, which they can use if they go forward for any additional grants. But as far as money that comes from the state for Front Porch Florida, I don't think they have that anymore.
Chelsea, thank you, Member Seawright. Chelsea, one recommendation of what I would encourage you, I don't know if you know Chelsea, she lives in the Duval neighborhood. Her name is Juanita Miles Hamilton. Juanita Miles Hamilton is one of the directors from former Governor Bush of Front Porch Florida. You may want to reach out to her. She may be a good resource. But Member Seawright is absolutely correct about model block home, and I didn't think about that till just now. But I don't know how, is model block still being funded anyways, Member Seawright?
You'd have to ask Director Vidal. I don't think that. I thought I saw on our plan that model block wasn't on there anymore, but I can't. Don't quote me on that.
Okay, I digress. I digress to staff. I think you pretty much got what I need. Just tweak it. Whatever ways you can tweak it, being more inclusive. I think pretty much we're giving you what it is. We want inclusivity. I'm hearing from Member Seawright, but I don't want it to come off where we're excluding people, because when I first heard you, Chelsea, and I appreciate you, acknowledging you forgot to mention certain things, and we all do that. But it was coming. That's why I kept using the word patriarchal, because of how it was presented, and I didn't want you to think I was just using that word to just use it, because it was like, wait a minute, you're keeping a lot of folks out that could need help. So anyway, if we could get a lot of that and make those tweaks, I'll be there to support you at the City Commission.
Thank you. I'll give your recommendations to the City Commission.
Thank you.
Member Palmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask whether, whether you considered the kind of the two different funding models of whether this is a kind of a lump sum either up front or whether this would be something that would, apply to people over time. The one consideration I had with, say this is able to be a lot more successful than we think it is, and there's a bunch of things that are going on. I think if we now suddenly have an extra $25,000 per person that can come into some of these houses that, tend to be in the 100 to 150, $200,000 range, we're suddenly bumping up the value of that. And so there may potentially, if we're doing it up front, I'm wondering if there, I mean, this is just sort of like a mental exercise, but whether or not that might kind of like potentially rapidly escalate a gentrification of some of these if now all of a sudden there's an extra stack of money there, versus if this is something that we're funding over time where we almost like guarantee the program for if those people are going to live there for 5 years, then they get that $25,000 added for them that way. And I don't know if that fights against some of the down payment issues that are preventing people from moving into these houses. I guess this is just kind of a, I don't know if there's a real specific point, but something I'd or I'd like to think through at least, or at least raises a potential, unintended benefit is that if we give it the money all of a sudden, we might run into an issue of it actually potentially progressing gentrification of these properties and raising property values faster than I think we'd like to.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Looks like we have an annual report.
Yep. Hello again, everybody. I will be brief. Included in your backup was the draft of the GCRA Advisory Board annual report. Because our meeting was bumped and we were unable to meet in person, we were granted an extension. So I just wanted to share the draft with you, see if you had any feedback that I will then incorporate into the next draft, which I'll bring to the January meeting, and hopefully you all will approve it then. So I'm just wondering if you all have had a chance to read through it, if you have any comments or questions or feedback.
Since we can't vote on anything, I assume people could email you directly with comments.
Yep, that's right. I also did receive one questionnaire after a little bit after the deadline, so I will also incorporate that into the next draft.
I don't see any hands up. Either people are getting tired or they really don't have any questions.
Possibly. Okay, no, that's
all right. That was our last item. We have public comment. Do we have any public comment, staff?
We don't have any hands up.
We don't.
I do.
Who said what?
I do. I have something.
Who's I?
Armando.
Oh, well, your member comment. That's the next item. So your floor.
Oops. All right. I guess for me, coming back to Member Vidal, based on the feedback that we heard from Sean McDermott today, I know that I moved at the last meeting that you all come back with a proposal for us to travel. However, I would like to ask the board if we can't travel as a group, that I would like to at least go up as a representative of the board, and I'll travel on my own to go up to Birmingham. But I would like to hear from Ms. Vidal. If anybody has spoken with anyone from Birmingham, can anyone give us an update about the project that went on with Birmingham?
Yes, without getting into it too much tonight, I was able to connect with the woman who manages the whole operation, which was awesome. And we were able to ask a lot of really good questions, but also really hear the story, hear how it's changed that area, hear kind of pitfalls from an operational standpoint, from a neighborhood standpoint. I mean, it's just kind of a loaded project, very typical of the type of work that we do, but on a much larger scale. So Miss Faye is her first name, right, Deborah? I'm looking for a yes. Yeah. Just couldn't remember off the top of my head.
It's Faye Oates. Faye Oates.
Faye
Yeah.
Oates, that's right. She's lovely, and she agreed to come and speak with the board if you all would like to make that part of the agenda, to get a presentation of the project from her and to have the ability to ask her questions. And so I actually told her I would reach out and find out if you wanted to put it on the agenda and when, so that we could perhaps give her a few options if you'd like to hear the whole story. So,
Cool. So Mr. Chair, for me,
I'll add to that just to say, obviously that project in Birmingham is a very large project. However, I think one of the big takeaways from that conversation, Sarah, particularly for Sarah and Mo, who were both on that call, is that building it is one piece of it. The other big piece was the event management piece. So I just think hearing that firsthand from Faye and possibly members of her team who could attend the meeting will give this board something to really contemplate and talk about, because we really haven't spent time, I think, to date, talking about the other piece of once it's out of the ground, whatever it is, right? That there's a big event management piece that would be a worthwhile conversation. So she is no longer the director of the Crossplex. She is actually the sports ambassador for the city of Birmingham. She was the first director. So she's agreed to make herself available if that's what the board would like to do. And she could certainly bring some members of the team so they can present and really kind of share lessons learned, like Sarah just mentioned, things that they've learned that would be good for us to know as we consider very similar projects in the sense of the historical value of Citizens Field here and the historical value of the Alabama Fairgrounds, which is what the Crossplex was before it became the Crossplex. I just wanted to add. Thank
you, Ms. Bowie. Mr. Chair, where I was going to go with it was rather than put us all with the pandemic going on, obviously traveling would not necessarily be ideal for all of us, but I'm happy to go up on my own volition, to go up in my capacity as a member of the board, to go not only sit, because we can always get something virtually, but there's nothing like seeing a project. But I also understand I want to be respectful and cognizant of what was presented today. But I also think that I would like to go up and see it. So we have something substantive and bring back what I can also find there in person, photos, experience, and go around there. Because I think it'll just provide an enriching experience, because also, like you said, Mr. Chair, to begin to move the conversation of 8th and Waldo forward in a meaningful and effective way, I think that it will do that. I'm happy to do that. I'm not asking for anybody to do it. I'll just do it on my own, but I just want to, if you all are fine with that, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful of anyone on the board. I want to hear you all's insights and what have you, but I know this is something, 8th and Waldo has been a passion of mine since the genesis of this board, and I just want to make sure we give it its due and just reward, because we've been talking about it, we've been talking around it, but now we're talking where the rubber meets the road, and I want us to have a meaningful and effective conversation, and this is just one tool in the toolbox. So I welcome you all's input. I value your input, and if I could do something more efficient or more prudent, I welcome that too.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer, you had your hand up.
Yes, one last thing, I guess, that's kind of surrounding this. Maybe this is a little bit of a side thing, and I'd like to maybe limit the discussion for it now, because I don't think, now is sufficient time for it. But I would like to ask if there's a way we can bring something back to this board that shows how exactly things come before us, and what is the, who's suggesting which projects, or what organization things get these certain projects here. I think some of the confusion that we've had is, why certain projects are showing up in certain timeframes, and and how that prioritization of which projects is happening, and that part, because I think that's something where, I am definitely a little bit murky with it, because of how many different organizations and things have been involved in it.
Okay, staff, is that something that you could put together a short presentation that talks about how the different entities and bring projects forward?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. The Caper folks also offered to come speak about their area. And I also know the city manager is coming in January to speak about the strategic plan and action agenda. And so that might be a good time
to ask that question.
Yeah, to really answer that question.
Okay, because I mean, I guess I'm a little with some of that stuff. I think I'd like to see a little, maybe a higher, not necessarily a higher level within the organizations, but just kind of like, all right, so these guys do this, and they're gonna. I guess I don't know how to describe it because there's the confusion for me of which things come
Can I help
come
you out
up
a little
when.
bit, Michael? Michael, are you asking for clarity, like when somebody brings project, whether it's Caper bringing it forward or it's the GCRA bringing it forward, you want to know where the project's genesis of where it's coming from?
A little bit, but also who and what is selecting the prioritization of those projects, because we have a finite amount of time, and like tonight we have been on here for a good long while, and I'm curious to see why those four showed up today versus other potential projects down the road. Are the things that we discussed today of us, what is defining why they came today and other things are coming in at the next meeting, that kind of stuff. That's where I'm a little fuzzy. And I think that would help answer some questions that, I feel like have kind of consistently been raised about, who's doing what and what's going on there. And I think that's, something I'm certainly not exactly familiar with. It's like why certain things at certain times is happening. So if there's just, I don't know, a slide, 2 slides, 3 slides, whatever, some sort of thing, that would be very beneficial for me.
Okay, you got that, Sarah? All right, nodding her head. Excellent. I don't see any more hands. Is there any additional member comment? I don't see any.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on, our next meeting is January 19th, 2021. And we hope to do it in person. And without objection, we'll take on Mr. Grundy Gomez's motion to adjourn.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Yep. Everybody stay safe, wear your mask.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.